Hi, my name is Randy Agert, and this is a brief introduction to pragmatics. Inferability versus inferrability. What a difference an R makes. When we talk about inferrables with two R's in linguistics and pragmatics especially, we're talking about propositions, arguments, characteristics, basically any part or of a proposition or an entire proposition can be considered an inferrable. And the name would suggest that it should be inferrable from some cotext, from something that's come before in the discourse. That's not always the case, as we're going to see, that an inferrable is not necessarily inferrable. For this, I'm going to just try to give some illustrations of what we mean and how this works. So we'll start with some straightforward inferrables that are straightforwardly inferrable from what comes before. So for example, if you say, I ate a salad, that it's easy to make the inference, I ate food from that because food or salads are a type of food. Likewise, if you say my neighbors own a golden lab, that licenses the inference, my neighbors own a dog. And so in that case, we can see that both of those would be considered inferrables. We might be able to go further and say, for example, if you say, I ate, that implies that you ate food. And so then we could infer that you ate food. And that would then be presumably an inferrable of sorts. We can see how this works in, also with sub-propositional elements. So for example, in the sentence, my neighbor owns a dog, and then you immediately follow it up by saying the dog is a golden lab, then the identity between the dog and a dog from the previous sentence, that's an inference that we're talking about the same dog. And it's such a straightforward inference, we don't even think about it. But in that case, we would argue that the dog is an inferrable. Or we can even use a pronoun in that context. My neighbor owns a dog, she is a golden lab. We then make the inference that she refers to the dog, not to the neighbor. And again, we would say that that's an inferrable, but a pretty straightforward inferrable. Likewise, if you say, I like teaching my pragmatics class, the students are smart, that's pretty straightforward, right? Now, that's a little bit more of a stretch than the identity one, where we said a dog and then we go straight to the dog. This forces us to infer that if there's a class, there are students. But again, that's a pretty straightforward inference, and so we would say that the inferrable, the students, is fine. Now notice here, at least for me, for my ears, it doesn't sound so good to say, I like teaching my pragmatics class. They are smart. The they might be a little bit of a stretch. It's a lot easier to go to the students, which is in contrast to a dog going to the identity with she. So it seems that pronouns perhaps need a somewhat more accessible antecedent for them than definite descriptions like the dog. Let me go on to some less straightforward inferrables. So for example, if you say, I ate dinner, you're really not licensed to infer from that, I ate a salad. So that proposition doesn't seem to be a straightforward inference. However, we do argue that that's perhaps inferrable with two R's. Likewise, if you say my neighbors, own two dogs, that doesn't license the inference my neighbors own a golden lab. And this is the important part, is that we can see with definites, for example, that it does seem that we are licensed to sort of make that inference in retrospect. So let me give you the example. I ate dinner. The salad was delicious. I actually find this works best if I kind of think in the terms of those noir movies voiceovers. I ate dinner. The salad was delicious. In that case, right, the salad seems licensed. And so it's sort of retroactively inferenced that the salad was part of that dinner, and then we say that the salad was an inferrable. Now, it doesn't mean that it's inferrable without, in the absence of that sentence, the salad was delicious, unlike saying, I ate a salad, I ate food, which is clearly inferrable without you having to say so. In this case, it's sort of licensing an inference. Likewise, if you say, my neighbor owns 2 dogs, the golden lab is adorable, the chihuahua is annoying, we then infer that the golden lab is one of those 2 dogs and the chihuahua is the other of those 2 dogs. And in that way, then the golden lab and the chihuahua are considered inferrables. And if you say, I like teaching my pragmatics class, the students' final presentations will be fascinating. In that case, then, it's certainly not an easy or an obvious inference from saying that I'm teaching a pragmatics class to assuming that the students are going to give final presentations. But again, if I say it, then that's considered an inferrable because we're sort of primed for it. We're ready for it. We accept it, even though it's perhaps not straightforwardly inferrable, absent me saying this sentence. So the question is, why do we call non-inferrable things inferrables? Well, really, the reason for this is because of the data. And what we're observing is that we do seem to make certain that when we've got these inferences, and perhaps they're even retroactive inferences, they still license us to have what are called non-canonical word orders. That is to say that we kind of shift the normal word order of a sentence around, and it seems that we can only move things to the beginning of a sentence when it is an inferrable. So for example, you can say, I ate a salad. On the salad were anchovies. Again, for some reason, I keep thinking in terms of a noir movie. I ate a salad. On the salad were anchovies. It also sounds fine to say it with, I ate a dinner. I ate a dinner. On the salad were anchovies. Okay, that sounds pretty good to my ear. Now, it might sound stilted, it might sound a little bit weird to front that on the salad, and then that forces you to flip the subject and the verb so that you get that inverse order, were anchovies rather than anchovies were on the salad. But it seems grammatical, and it seems fine in that context. But note, it doesn't, at least to my ear, sound so good to say, I ate. On the salad were anchovies. That's a little too far, right? So for some reason, that one can't be fronted. So the accessibility of the salad in that case doesn't seem to be there, right? All right, now with number 4, my neighbor owns a female golden lab and a male chihuahua. Her, I find adorable. Him, I can't stand. Now, in that case, again, we've got that identity, right? So her goes with a female golden lab, him with a male chihuahua. Again, that sounds pretty good. Now, it's perhaps sometimes a little odd to do that fronting, that preposing, moving the object of find or stand to the beginning of the sentence, but it's part of English. So that sounds okay. But notice that we can also do it even when you aren't licensed to make the inference until after the sentence has been said. So you can say, my neighbor owns 2 dogs. The golden lab, I find adorable. The chihuahua, I can't stand. Now that's a little bit more of a stretch than the pronouns because we already mentioned that the golden lab is female, the chihuahua is male. but it still seems to be licensed, and so we call those still inferables because they behave similarly to the ones that can be inferred in a more straightforward manner. Notice, though, that if I were to tack on that last sentence, the cat I abhor, that doesn't sound right? Because we can't in any way find a connection between what preceded and the cat. So it still has to have an inferencing process where we can link it back to previous text. So I'll read that whole thing. My neighbors own 2 dogs. The golden lab I find adorable. The chihuahua I can't stand. The cat I abhor. That just sounds weird, right? The cat part. Because we haven't talked about a cat yet. So we're really not licensed to assume that there's a cat there, even though we can make the inference from dog to golden lab and chihuahua. Number 6, I like teaching my pragmatics class. From the students, I always get ideas that I can use in future classes. Sounds okay, right? Again, we've made that inference because if there's a class, there are students. Kind of a deductive process there. The second one is perhaps a little bit more challenging of an inference because it's not automatic. I like teaching my pragmatics class. From the students' final presentations, I always get ideas that I can use in future classes. Still pretty good, right? Again, we've got that fronting of from the students or from the students' final presentations. But 8 should sound a little weird. I like teaching my pragmatics class. From novels, I always get ideas that I can use in future classes. You don't seem licensed to move the from novels to the front. Notice it would sound fine to say it this way. I like teaching my pragmatics class. I always get ideas that I can use in future classes from novels. There, it's okay when it comes at the end. So in that one, we would say is not inferrable, whereas the others are inferrables. And so in that case, we can treat them in the same way as things that have already been evoked, things that we've already mentioned in the previous discourse, identified. And so in that way, we say that they're all part of the same class, that operate through some sort of inferencing process. And that's the idea of it being an inferrable. Even though it's not directly inferrable from what preceded, we can make that retroactive inference based on what comes.